For this example, the product U-RUST powdered oxide was used by first depositing a small quantity in a well. To hydrate the product, water was added and stirred with a brush into a homogeneous mixture and allowed to stand for 10 minutes. The mixture was then applied directly to the surface using a brush. The surface coverage was irregular, which creates variation in the finish. Here you can see how the product dries and oxidizes naturally. After a couple of hours, the U-RUST powdered oxide will have dried, leaving a wide variety of authentic effects. To obtain more shades, Ammo offers two different rust reactors. The rust reactor type 1 was splashed on the surface using a brush and a toothpick. Immediately afterwards, the process was repeated using rust reactor type 2. On the opposite side, you will be shown the result obtained by quickly working with the rust reactors. Begin by applying the rust reactor type 1 on the upper areas over the U-RUST powdered oxide using a brush for precision. It is essential to shake the rust reactor type 2 thoroughly before use. Next, the lower surface was covered. Now you can see the difference in the finish on the U-RUST powdered oxide, having only worked with the rust reactors so far. Here you will be shown how to use the U-RUST color Deep Oxide. It is important to shake the jars thoroughly before use, so that all components are mixed completely. The Deep Oxide effect has been applied over a variety of base colors in order to obtain different shades and effects. The product is applied generously directly from the bottle onto the brown and oxide colors. On the light colors, the powdered oxide was applied randomly to create a range of effects. You can even dab gently with an old brush to create small chips. Allow the previous application to dry and continue with the application of the rust reactor types, beginning with rust reactor type 1. The product was applied to randomly selected areas. Rust reactor type 2 was then used to work the rest of the piece. Ultimately, both rust reactor types were applied at the same time on the light color. Once dry, you can appreciate the different rust tones that you can achieve by varying the base colors and varying the use of each rust reactor type. In this example, the U-RUST color Black Oxide was used along with both rust reactor type 1 and rust reactor type 2. Remember to shake the bottle thoroughly so that the components are completely and evenly mixed. A number 6 synthetic round brush was used to spread the U-RUST Black Oxide over the surface. Once dry, the effect began with the application of U-RUST rust reactor type 1. By first placing it in a plastic container. The product was then applied over the entire surface using a round brush. Each of the rust reactors will create different effects, scale textures, and real corrosion tones. Once dry, you can see the incredible result, a realistic effect in just a few fun and easy steps. On a different piece, only the rust reactor type 2 was used. Do not forget to thoroughly shake the rust reactor products for proper results. Using a brush, the rust reactor type 2 was randomly spread over the surface. Here you can see the excellent result of using the rust reactor type 2. Now you will be shown the effect created when using both rust reactor types at the same time. First, the rust reactor type 1 was randomly applied on the surface. Without letting the previous application dry, rust reactor type 2 was also randomly applied. The combination of both creates a stunningly realistic effect. Here you can see the difference created with Black Oxide when using one of the two rust reactor types or both at the same time. Next, you will be shown how to use the U-RUST effect Black Transparent Oxide on the tail of an aircraft. As always, shake the bottle well before use. You can even stir using a non-metallic tool. Black Transparent Oxide is a semi-transparent product that will leave some of the base color visible. The effect was applied with a brush using different amounts on each of the panels. In this case, starting light and working towards greater amounts applied. Once dry, the U-RUST Black Transparent Oxide takes on a dark finish. To activate the rust reactor type 1 was applied to the panel on the right, while the rust reactor type 2 was applied to the middle panel. On the third and final panel, both rust reactor types were used at the same time. Once dry, you can see the contrast in both color and texture. For the next example, the Ammo Modern Gas Pumps kit is shown primed with one-shot brown oxide. For this example, the U-RUST color Rust Oxide Patina was used. Don't forget to shake each color thoroughly to obtain the correct results. Using a brush, the Rust Oxide Patina was applied. Note that these products also create an in-scale and lifelike texture. This rust will also have a transparent finish, so it is important to choose a suitable base color. Once dry, it is possible to intensify the rust effect by applying a second coat to select areas. After allowing the product to properly dry, Rust Reactor Type 1 was applied on one side. On the other side, the Rust Reactor Type 2 was spread over the whole surface. On the front area, a combination of the two rust reactor types was applied. Once dry, you can see that it is easy to obtain totally different finishes in each area. To complete and unify the whole piece, both rust reactors were applied, this time using a round brush and one of Ammo's brass toothpicks to make splashes all around the piece, beginning with the Rust Reactor Type 1, and immediately after, the surface was splashed with Rust Reactor Type 2. Here you can see the final result once finished. With this quick and easy method, you can enjoy creating a truly authentic rusted finish. This example began by priming the statue in matte black from Titan Hobby. The next step was to apply the Dio dry brush acrylic colors, gunmetal, and brass. The colors were applied beginning with gunmetal, using the dry brush technique and a dry brush technical brush 8 ideal for this step. This step was repeated with the Dio dry brush color brass. Next, the U-RUST color Copper Blue Patina came into play. This unique ammo product accurately imitates oxidation on brass, copper, and bronze. Using a round brush, the Copper Blue Patina was applied over the entire statue. Before it was dry, the excess was removed with Ammo's teardropped sponge. Both rust reactors were applied to the figure at random, beginning with Rust Reactor 1, followed by Rust Reactor Type 2, applied to the rest of the areas where the U-RUST color Copper Blue Patina was applied. The highly useful U-RUST color Oxide Grime was applied on one of the towers of the Bismarck. The color was applied to the horizontal areas directly from the bottle, covering them completely. On the sloped surfaces, a round brush was used to continue spreading the product without covering it completely. Using a finer round brush, the product was applied on the horizontal and vertical areas of the tower. This time, small amounts were applied randomly. If your subject requires further variety of texture, the rust can easily be worked with a sponge. Once dry, you can appreciate the different finishes created, each depending on how the product has been applied. Work with the rust reactors began with Type 1, by covering only select areas where the rust had previously been applied. The remaining surfaces were covered with Rust Reactor Type 2. Here, you can see the difference in contrast between the two. To unify or achieve a wider chromatic richness within the rust, you can randomly splash both Rust Reactor types over the whole piece. As it dries, a multitude of effects are easily obtained. For the Warhammer example, the main gate of the Garden of Moor was selected. Here you will be shown how to imitate rusted metal in the area of the skulls. For this step, a mixture of outlining black and green-blue was used. Once the paint was dry, work began with the U-RUST color Copper Blue Patina. The effect was applied randomly using the Dry Brush Technical 2 brush. The next step was to apply Rust Reactor Type 1 to obtain more nuance within the rust. After just 2 hours, you can see how an exceptionally realistic corrosion aspect has been created. Continuing with the door, the U-RUST color Oxide Grime was used. After shaking the bottle, the product was applied generously to cover the gate. The surface was allowed to stand for 10 minutes before the door was treated with the Rust Reactor Type 1. On the cross, the U-RUST color Powdered Oxide was used, thinned with a few drops of water. The color was then activated by using both Rust Reactor types individually and again by mixing them together. All 3 versions were applied randomly to cover the whole cross. Here, you can see the stunning results once all of the Powdered Oxide variants had dried. For this last example, all of the oxide colors are shown being used at the same time on one model. Each of the components was painted using a range of base colors. The top of the turret was treated to U-RUST color Powdered Oxide. This time, only a few drops of water were added, leaving the mixture thick. The upper surfaces were worked with the same color after being diluted to a much thinner version. Continuing with the same mixture, the remaining areas of the hull were covered, including the wheels and the lower part of the undercarriage. The fun continued with the U-RUST color Deep Oxide, which has a thicker texture than the previous color. Don't forget to shake each of the U-RUST products well before using them. The U-RUST color Deep Oxide was used for the remaining parts and surfaces. The next color applied was Oxide Grime, used to cover some of the missing pieces. This color gives us a rust finish in reddish-brown tones. The dynamic color Rust Oxide Patina was used to obtain transparent finishes. It is essential to understand and carefully choose the base color, as it will directly affect the resulting tone, providing endless possibilities. The Rust Oxide Patina was used on some of the pieces remaining without oxidation. For the sides of the turret, both U-RUST colors Black Oxide and Black Oxide Transparent were used. Each was used randomly until the whole surface was covered. The brush strokes were generally worked from top to bottom. The combination of both allows for the application to specific areas with greater intensity than others, as one of the two allows the base color to show through and the other does not. To complete the work, a fine brush was used. Each of the colors was then used to make small adjustments and random contrasting combinations. Here you can see how the effect appears before using either Rust Reactor. It could be left at this point, where the product oxidizes naturally and generates a realistic finish. By alternating all of the oxides, you are able to create an endless range of different effects include extremely dynamic and natural chipping, and oxidized surfaces of any color or texture. For this Panzer II, the rust reactors were applied selectively to specific areas to increase the variation even more. Rust reactor type 1 was first applied selectively, bearing in mind that it will react differently on each of the oxide colors. This step was repeated with the rust reactor type 2, and then again by altering both. As you can see, the surface has gained more nuance with these simple steps. The new level of authenticity and realism is exciting for modelers of every scale and genre. Additional effects can be added to the U-RUST finish, such as scratches with tweezers. The possibilities offered by the U-RUST Corrosion Creator Set are endless, and well suited to any type of modeling. Is available at www.ammo.es. Discover many more videos on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate notifications. Thank you for watching.